November 24th, 1981, Montreal Forum. Queen had arrived in Montreal for 2 nights of performances that would eventually be filmed and released as one of the band's most celebrated live recordings, a specific and well-documented moment in the group's touring history, captured with the kind of comprehensive professional filming that has made it, across the more than 4 decades since, one of the primary visual records of Queen performing at the height of their live capabilities. What the surviving film does not show, according to the account of an unnamed venue security coordinator who has discussed this specific evening only through limited testimony offered decades after the fact, is a moment that occurred during the performance's midpoint. A specific and genuinely dangerous surge in crowd density near the stage's front barriers that the coordinator has characterized as coming considerably closer to a serious safety incident than anything visible in the officially released footage would suggest. The Montreal Forum, according to the coordinator's account, had been configured for this particular performance with a general admission floor area that concentrated a substantial portion of the audience directly in front of the stage without the kind of tiered barrier systems that later became standard practice across the touring industry. Specifically in response to incidents at other venues during this general era, and as the performance progressed into its more intense and audience-engaging middle section. The coordinator has described a specific and rapidly developing crowd surge that began pushing forward with a force that the venue's existing barrier structure was not adequately designed to manage. The coordinator has described watching this development from his position near the stage's side, understanding, through his professional experience managing crowd dynamics at similar large venues, that the specific pattern he was observing, a forward surge concentrated in one area rather than distributed across the broader crowd, carried genuine risk of the kind of crushing injury that had already, by 1981, become a documented and increasingly recognized danger at large-scale rock concerts. I could see people near the front losing their footing, the coordinator has said. According to the version of this account that has circulated among the limited number of people who have encountered this story, not falling exactly, but being held up by the crush around them, which is actually more dangerous in some ways, because if that crowd had shifted even slightly wrong, people could have gone down and been trampled before anyone had time to react properly. The coordinator has described attempting to signal to venue staff positioned closer to the barrier to begin the standard crowd management protocols his position required, but has said that the specific speed of the developing surge, combined with the general noise and chaos of an arena-scale rock performance already in full progress, made rapid coordinated response considerably more difficult than it would have been under calmer circumstances. What happened next, according to the coordinator's account, involved Freddie Mercury himself, who the coordinator has said appeared to notice the developing crowd problem from the stage, a specific visual recognition that the coordinator has characterized as remarkable given the general difficulty performers typically have in accurately assessing crowd conditions from an elevated stage position, while simultaneously managing the demands of an active performance. He stopped singing, the coordinator has said, in the account that has proven most consistent across his limited testimony, right in the middle of a line, which I remember specifically because the band kept playing, but his voice just cut out. And for a second, I thought something was wrong with him, not the crowd. But then I realized he was looking directly at the exact section where the surge was happening, and he did something that I've never seen a performer do before or since in exactly that way. What Freddie reportedly did, according to the coordinator's account, involved an immediate and specific vocal intervention directed at the crowd itself, breaking entirely from the song's structure to address the audience directly, using, according to the coordinator's characterization, a combination of calm authority and genuine warmth that the coordinator has said produced an almost immediate shift in the crowd's physical behavior. The coordinator has described Freddie's specific words as addressing the crowd surge without alarming them into the kind of panic that can sometimes make crowd safety situations considerably worse, framing his intervention, according to this account, not as a warning about danger, but as a specific request connected to the show itself. Asking the audience near the front to take a step back, to give themselves and each other more room, phrased in a way that maintained the performance's overall energy and warmth, rather than introducing the kind of alarm that might have triggered exactly the panicked movement the situation most needed to avoid. He made it sound like part of the show, the coordinator has said. According to the version of this account that has reached the small number of people who have encountered this story. Something about wanting everyone close to him to be comfortable, wanting to be able to see everyone's faces properly. This kind of charming, almost flirtatious request that got people laughing and stepping back at the same time, and within maybe 30 seconds. The crush had eased enough that I could actually see the barrier holding properly again instead of bowing under that kind of pressure. The coordinator has emphasized, across his limited testimony, that this specific intervention occurred with a speed and precision that struck him, even decades later, as remarkable, Freddie apparently processing the developing danger, formulating an effective response, and delivering that response to tens of thousands of people, all within what the coordinator has estimated as less than a minute of total elapsed time from his own first recognition that something was going seriously wrong. Freddie resumed the performance, according to the coordinator's account, almost immediately after this brief intervention, seamlessly returning to the song exactly where he had stopped, a specific transition that the coordinator has characterized as demonstrating a kind of performative composure that made the entire incident, from the broader audience's perspective, feel like nothing more than a charming and spontaneous moment of connection between performer and crowd, rather than what the coordinator has insisted. Across every version of his account represented a genuine and narrowly avoided safety crisis. The surviving officially released footage from this particular Montreal performance does capture a brief moment consistent with this account, a short passage during which Freddie can be seen addressing the crowd with language that some fans who have studied the footage closely have noted seems slightly disconnected from the song's actual lyrical content, though this footage alone, without the specific context the coordinator's testimony provides, has never been widely interpreted or discussed as documenting anything beyond an ordinary moment of stage banter. The genuine underlying danger the coordinator describes remaining entirely invisible to anyone watching only the officially released recording without access to his additional testimony. Nobody who wasn't actually there, actually watching that specific section of crowd at that specific moment, would ever know how close it came, the coordinator has said in a characterization that has been cited among people who find this story credible, as consistent with the broader and well-documented reality that concert safety incidents narrowly avoided rarely receive the kind of attention or documentation that actual incidents generate, a specific asymmetry in historical record-keeping that means genuine near disasters, however significant they might have felt to the people directly involved in preventing them, often leave considerably less evidence than the actual disasters they successfully avoided. This particular dynamic has been noted by researchers who study the broader history of concert safety across the 1970s and 1980s, an era during which several major venues experienced serious and sometimes fatal crowd crush incidents that eventually prompted the kind of barrier and crowd management reforms that became standard industry practice by the following decade. A context that lends the coordinator's account a specific plausibility, the recognition that the general conditions he describes, inadequate barrier infrastructure combined with intense audience enthusiasm during a major arena performance, align coherently with documented risk factors from this specific period of touring history, even independent of whether this particular account of Freddie's specific intervention can be fully verified through any additional corroborating source. Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon have never publicly addressed this specific alleged incident in any interview where researchers have been able to confirm the question was directly posed, though this absence carries somewhat ambiguous weight given the specific nature of the account. A rapidly developing and rapidly resolved crowd situation that, according to the coordinator's own characterization, may not have been fully visible or apparent to the other band members who remained focused on their own instrumental performance during the brief period when Freddie's vocal intervention occurred. The coordinator has said, across his limited testimony, that he never discussed the incident directly with Freddie or with anyone connected to the band in the aftermath, understanding his own professional role as involving crowd safety management rather than any ongoing relationship with the performers themselves, and that his decision to eventually share this specific memory, offered only decades after the fact, and only through limited and carefully guarded channels, reflected less any specific intention to correct the historical record and more a simple recognition, arriving with his own advancing age, that certain memories from an otherwise ordinary professional career felt worth preserving somewhere before they disappeared entirely, along with the people who had actually witnessed them. What the story offers, regardless of its ultimate verifiability, is a specific and compelling illustration of a quality that appears, across numerous separate and more thoroughly documented accounts from people who worked closely with Freddie Mercury throughout his touring career, to have genuinely characterized his relationship to live performance. An unusually acute and immediate attentiveness to the actual physical well-being of the audiences gathered to see him, extending beyond the more commonly celebrated aspects of his stage presence, his vocal range, his command of enormous crowds, his theatrical intensity, into something considerably more practical and considerably less visible to anyone not specifically positioned to recognize it in the moment it occurred. Whether this particular Montreal incident happened exactly as the coordinator has described it, whether Freddie's split-second recognition and intervention prevented a genuine safety crisis or simply addressed a less severe crowd density issue that the coordinator's own professional anxiety may have subsequently magnified in retrospective memory. The underlying suggestion the story offers, a performer whose attention to his audience extended into genuine and immediate concern for their physical safety, even in the middle of an otherwise purely artistic performance, remains entirely consistent with the broader historical understanding of exactly how seriously Freddie Mercury apparently took the enormous reciprocal trust that tens of thousands of people extended to him every single time they gathered, sometimes in genuinely precarious physical circumstances, simply to be close enough to watch him perform.